Welcome back to my third and final video about founders and founding in online communities. The first two videos, the first talked about sort of the reasons we might want to study online foundings. What I see is sort of the puzzles and the interesting kind of implications of this sort of research. In the second, I talked about three papers, which are sort of some of the only papers on online founding, which sort of scratch the surface on what's going on, who founders are, why they choose to found things, and what sorts of things they can do and things about them will kind of are correlated with communities that are successful. So in this here, let me start my slides. In this video, I'm going to talk. This will be quite brief, but what I see is the things that we don't know, and where to go from here. And so what we don't know is a lot. There is what we know, as you saw, is it's really quite limited. There is, to be frank, not a lot of research going on in this space, and there's lots of room for us to figure out what's going on and to learn about how this is happening, and how sort of new communities are getting started. So really quickly, what I see as the frontiers in this research, one is how people decide what community they want to start. I've looked and we've looked a little bit about why people start them and sort of what their motivations are, I guess. But how do they think about it? For example, do they and this was suggested actually from our survey research, that people sort of take existing communities into account, that they may search for communities. Do people just sort of get inspired that there's a community that they participate in and they think, oh, maybe something that's almost the same as this but a little different would also be, would be a great community. We just don't know how that kind of thought process works. If I often think of it as sort of if you think of it as a space, the topical space, there's all these dimensions along which online communities could exist. There's maybe the baseball area of the topical space, and there's areas that, about Major League Baseball teams, but there's also, maybe could be a community on learning how to pitch faster, or a community on, learning how to be a better batter, or, statistics in baseball, or, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's sort of this space along which there are all these dimensions. But there's also, kind of, informational space versus, fan fiction and people creative spaces, and sort of how do people decide and think about where in this topical space, where along these dimensions, if they want to start a new community, where does it go? How do they conceive of the space of possibilities that they might start a new community in? So that's one question. And a related one is, what are the events that prompt foundings? We got at this a little bit in our survey paper, and there were some really interesting suggestions. Some people talked about disappointment with a similar community, that this is sort of related if anyone has studied or looked at or been involved with open source software, and the idea of forking, that you can kind of take the code from a software project and sort of give it new governance, or a new idea, a new direction, and so does that happen in online communities? And there's some recent research that suggests that may be a kind of an important way that new communities get started, is sort of a new attempt at doing the same thing but in a different way, or with different governance practices. Another that's sort of obvious is new existence of information in the world, and so maybe a change in the offline world is a better way to think of it. So in things like wikis, people would say, there was a new game that came out And so I thought there should be a new wiki about it. That's an obvious one, but other things as well that the rise of Donald Trump, for example, as Donald Trump became a viable presidential candidate, the subreddit, the Donald, became more and more popular, right? So sort of this interaction between online and offline things that are going on. And they certainly, more and more feed into each other, right? That the offline and online worlds are obviously super interrelated, and can drive events the other direction. So those are a few frontiers. I also think that a really fruitful area of research is sort of understanding the dynamics of power in online communities. Trying to figure out what roles founders play over time as things age. So Charlie Keene at the University of Washington has been doing some work on with some collaborators that shows that like moderator networks, if you look at the largest subreddits, a lot of them are moderated by the same people. That's sort of who holds power. Somehow, as things get older and more popular, that it shifts. That it's no longer the founders who hold power, but there's sort of a group of sort of professional moderators who. You could kind of see it either positively or negatively, right? Who either take control or who offer their services to make community moderation possible at a larger scale. So looking at that sort of power dynamics and more broadly thinking about like what about a community, along what dimensions does a community change as it grows or if it grows, and how does that relate to what people get out of it? How does it relate to whether or not it grows? Are there communities which can't change along certain dimensions and that's why they don't grow, etc. I think there's lots of fruitful ideas in thinking of communities along sort of this time horizon, and thinking about how they change over time. Sorry. So I forgot that I had another bullet point there. Yeah, basically what I just said. How do they change as they age and grow? I think another question that's interesting to me is why corporations aren't more successful in taking over online communities. We think obviously about the platforms themselves as sort of profiting off and off of donated labor almost, and about Facebook and Google getting really powerful from our work. But why isn't the cars subreddit, sort of taken over by Ford or Chrysler, and just become spam for them? Those sorts of questions, like what is it? In many arenas, we have seen that the corporations have been able to sort of wrest control is the negative version, to capitalize on, to make efficient, I guess would be the positive spin, many aspects of our lives and of things that seemed to be sort of outside of that. The move from Usenet to Facebook, I think is a great example of that. And so but why? I would say in general, online communities, although the platforms may be corporations, they are by and large free from, other than the ads, free from too much direct corporate influence. And I'm interested in why that is and thinking through that. And a related, related question is like how do they differ across platforms? Do founding decisions, do the goals? We talked, for example, to wiki founders and found that their top goal was to build an information artifact. It's almost certainly not the case that a subreddit founder's top goal would be an information artifact, right? And so how do things differ across these platforms? Do founders differ who they are? Certainly their goals probably differ. What sorts of benefits and plans do they have, and how might that change? So that's kind of what I see. Making sure I didn't have anything else, but that's kind of what I see as some of the frontiers, some of the things that I think could and should be learned about online community founders. Thanks for listening to my videos. I look forward to conversations and thoughts about these. Please feel free to reach out.